Maya Chen sat in the back corner of room 304, just like she did every day. Her long black hair fell forward, covering most of her face as she bent over her sketchbook. The pencil in her hand moved quickly across the white paper, creating dark lines and soft shadows. She was drawing a face, an old woman's face full of wrinkles and stories. Maya was good at drawing faces. She could see things in people that others missed. Around her, the art classroom was loud and busy. Students talked and laughed. Some argued about which colors worked best together. Others played music from their phones while they painted large canvases. A group of 4 students worked together on a big sculpture made of wire and old newspapers. They joked and pushed each other playfully as they worked. Maya heard all of this, but she did not join in. She never joined in. She kept her eyes on her paper and her pencil moving. This was how she had always been ever since she was a little girl. Quiet, shy, invisible. Ms. Rodriguez, the art teacher, walked slowly around the room. She stopped at each student's workspace to look at their projects. She gave advice and encouragement. Her voice was warm and kind. When she reached Maya's corner, she stopped and looked at the drawing. "Maya, this is beautiful," Ms. Rodriguez said softly. She knew Maya did not like loud attention. "You have captured something very special in this woman's eyes. There is sadness, but also strength." Maya's cheeks turned pink. She looked down at her lap. "Thank you," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet that Ms. Rodriguez had to lean closer to hear her. "Have you thought about entering the student art show next month?" Ms. Rodriguez asked. "Your work deserves to be seen by more people." Maya shook her head quickly. The thought of people looking at her art, of people looking at her, made her stomach feel tight and uncomfortable. "I don't think so," she said, still whispering. Ms. Rodriguez smiled gently. She did not push. She had been teaching long enough to know that some students needed time. Some students bloomed slowly like flowers that only opened when they felt safe. "Well, think about it," she said, and moved on to the next student. Maya let out a small breath of relief. She looked back at her drawing. The old woman on the paper seemed to look back at her with understanding eyes. Maya often felt that her drawings understood her better than real people did. The clock on the wall showed that it was almost noon. Soon the bell would ring for lunch break. Maya started to pack her supplies carefully into her worn backpack. She wrapped her charcoal sticks in an old cloth so they would not break. She closed her sketchbook gently, protecting the drawing inside. When the bell rang, students rushed toward the door. They moved in groups, already making plans about where to eat lunch and what to do. Maya waited until most of them had left. She did not like the crowded hallways. She did not like the way people bumped into each other and shouted to be heard over the noise. When the room was almost empty, Maya stood up. She was tall but walked with her shoulders curved forward, as if she was trying to take up less space in the world. She pulled her backpack onto her back and walked toward the door. "Have a good lunch." "Maya?" Ms. Rodriguez called from her desk. "You too," Maya replied, so quietly that she was not sure if her teacher heard her. The hallway was still crowded with students. Maya kept her head down and walked quickly. She knew where she was going. She had been going to the same place for lunch every day for the past 3 months, ever since she had discovered it. Most students ate lunch in the big cafeteria on the first floor. It was always packed with people. The sound of hundreds of voices talking at once mixed with the clatter of trays and dishes. The smell of hot food filled the air. Some students sat outside on the grass when the weather was nice. They formed circles and shared food and stories. Maya did not go to any of these places. Instead, she walked to the back staircase, the one that most students did not use. She went down, down, down to the basement level of Brighton Arts Academy. The basement was quiet. Not many people came down here during the day. The hallway lights were old and some flickered slightly. The walls were painted a dull gray color that had probably once been white. Maya's footsteps echoed softly on the tile floor. She walked past empty classrooms that were used for storage. Through the small windows in the doors, she could see stacks of old chairs, broken easels, and boxes of supplies. She walked past the boiler room where the building's heating system hummed and clanked. She walked past a janitor's closet that smelled like cleaning chemicals and old mops. At the end of the hallway, there was a door with a small window. A faded sign on the door said, "Practice Room 7." This was where Maya went every day for lunch. The practice rooms had been built many years ago for music students. There were 10 of them in the basement, each one a small soundproof room with just enough space for a piano or a few chairs. Music students came here to practice their instruments without bothering others. But practice room 7 was different. It was at the very end of the hallway, far from the other practice rooms. Most music students did not bother walking all the way down here when there were rooms closer to the stairs. The room had become forgotten, a quiet space that nobody used anymore. Maya had found it by accident one day when she was looking for a place to eat lunch alone. She had tried the library, but it was too crowded with students studying. She had tried sitting outside, but groups of people kept walking past and made her feel exposed. Then she had wandered down to the basement and found this room. Now it was her special place. Her secret. She opened the door and stepped inside. The room was small and plain. The walls were covered in old soundproofing foam that had turned yellow with age. There was one small window high up on the wall, too high to see out of, but it let in a little bit of natural light. And against the far wall there was an old upright piano. The piano had been there when Maya first found the room. It was old and worn. The wood was scratched and dull. Some of the keys were yellowed like old teeth. The bench was wooden and rickety, with scratches and names carved into it by students from long ago. Maya closed the door behind her and felt her shoulders relax. Here, in this quiet room, she did not have to worry about saying the wrong thing or being in anyone's way. Here she could just be. She sat down on the floor with her back against the wall. She pulled her lunch out of her backpack. It was the same lunch she brought every day, a peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water. She ate slowly, enjoying the silence. As she ate, her eyes kept moving to the piano. She had been curious about it since the first day she found this room. She had never learned to play piano. Her family had not had enough money for music lessons when she was growing up. But her grandmother, who had passed away 2 years ago, had known how to play. Maya remembered visiting her grandmother's small apartment when she was a little girl. Her grandmother had an old piano, not very different from this one. On special visits, her grandmother would let Maya sit on her lap at the piano bench. Her grandmother's wrinkled hands would guide Maya's small fingers to the keys. "This is Claire de Lune," her grandmother would say in her accented English. She had come to America from Taiwan many years ago, but her voice still carried the music of her first language. "It means light of the moon. Listen," and her grandmother would play, and the music would fill the small apartment like magic. Maya would close her eyes and see the moon in her mind, bright and silver and beautiful. Her grandmother had taught her the very beginning of the song, just the first few notes. Maya had been 7 years old then. She had practiced those notes over and over, proud that she could make the same beautiful sounds her grandmother made. But then her grandmother had gotten sick. The visits became less frequent. The piano sat silent. And then her grandmother was gone, and with her went the music. Maya finished her sandwich and brushed the crumbs from her lap. She looked at the piano again. She had been eating lunch in this room for 3 months, and every day she looked at that piano. Every day she wondered if it still worked. Every day she thought about her grandmother's hands on the keys. Today something felt different. Maybe it was the gray, rainy weather outside that made her feel melancholic. Maybe it was the drawing she had done that morning, the old woman's face that reminded her a little of her grandmother. Maybe it was simply that she had been wondering for too long. Maya stood up slowly. She walked over to the piano and stood in front of it, looking down at the keys. Her heart beat a little faster. She felt nervous, though she did not know why. There was nobody here to watch her. Nobody to judge if she played wrong notes or made mistakes. She reached out one finger and pressed a single white key in the middle of the keyboard. The note rang out clear and true. It was not out of tune like she had expected. The sound filled the small room and then faded slowly into silence. Maya felt something warm spread through her chest. She pressed another key, then another. Each one sang out. The piano was old, but someone had taken care of it. The notes were still good. She sat down on the wooden bench. It creaked under her weight but held steady. She placed both hands on the keys, her fingers finding the positions her grandmother had taught her so many years ago. And then, taking a deep breath, Maya began to play. The notes came slowly at first. Her fingers were uncertain, remembering movements from 12 years ago. But the melody was still there, buried deep in her memory like a treasure. The opening notes of Claire de Lune floated out from the old piano, hesitant but recognizable. Maya played the only part she knew, perhaps 8 or 10 measures. It was not perfect. She stumbled over one note and had to start that part again. But when she reached the end of what she remembered, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt connected. Connected to her grandmother. Connected to something beautiful. Connected to a part of herself that she had forgotten existed. Her eyes grew wet with tears, but she was smiling. She played the short section again, and this time it came more easily. The muscle memory was still there, sleeping in her fingers, waiting all these years to wake up. Maya played it a third time, then a fourth. Each time felt more natural. Each time brought back more memories. Her grandmother's apartment, the smell of tea brewing, the feeling of being small and safe and loved. When she finally stopped playing, the room was very quiet. Maya sat with her hands still resting on the keys. She felt different somehow, lighter, like she had found something she had not known she was looking for. She looked at the clock on the wall and was surprised to see that lunch period was almost over. She needed to get back upstairs for her next class, but as she stood up from the piano bench, she knew something important had changed. She would come back tomorrow, and the day after that. This piano, this room, this music, it belonged to her now. It was her secret, her special thing. Maya gathered her backpack and walked to the door. Before she left, she looked back at the piano one more time. In the dim light of the small room, it almost seemed to glow. "Thank you," she whispered to the piano, to her grandmother, to the universe that had led her to this forgotten room. Then she opened the door and stepped back into the hallway, carrying her secret with her like a warm stone in her pocket. The rest of the school day passed in its usual way. Maya went to her afternoon classes. She sat quietly and took notes. She did not speak unless called upon. To everyone else, she was the same shy girl she had always been. But inside, something was different. Inside, music was playing. The next day, Maya could barely focus on her morning classes. Her mind kept wandering back to the piano in the basement. She kept remembering the feeling of the keys under her fingers, the sound of the music filling that small room. During her drawing class, Ms. Rodriguez had to call her name twice before Maya heard her. "Maya, are you all right?" her teacher asked with concern in her voice. Maya blinked and looked up. "Yes, sorry. I was just thinking." Ms. Rodriguez smiled. "Well, try to think while you draw. Your portrait needs some work on the shadows." Maya nodded and picked up her charcoal, but her hands moved automatically. Her thoughts were somewhere else, somewhere in the basement with an old piano. When lunchtime finally came, Maya packed her things faster than usual. She grabbed her backpack and left the classroom before most of the other students had even stood up. She walked quickly through the hallways, her heart beating with excitement. Down the back stairs she went, her feet moving faster with each step. Through the basement hallway with its flickering lights and gray walls, past the storage rooms and the boiler room and the janitor's closet, all the way to the end, to practice room 7. She opened the door and stepped inside, closing it quickly behind her. The piano was there waiting for her just as she had left it. Maya dropped her backpack on the floor and went straight to the piano bench. She did not even take out her lunch first. She sat down and placed her hands on the keys. She played the section of Clair de Lune that she knew, the part her grandmother had taught her. It came more easily today than it had yesterday. Her fingers remembered better now. When she finished the familiar part, Maya did not stop. Something made her keep going. She tried to remember if there was more, if her grandmother had ever played beyond the section Maya knew. The melody seemed to want to continue, to go somewhere else. Maya's fingers began to move on their own, making up notes that felt like they should come next. She did not know if what she was playing was the real song or something new, something from inside her own head. But it did not matter. It sounded right. It felt right. She played for 10 minutes, then 15, then 20. She lost track of time completely. Her fingers moved across the keys, sometimes playing the melody she knew, sometimes making up new melodies. Some of the notes she played clashed and sounded wrong, but she kept going. Other notes fit together perfectly, creating sounds that made her chest feel warm. It was like drawing, she realized. When she drew, her hand moved without her thinking too much about it. Her pencil knew where to make dark lines and where to leave the paper white. Playing the piano was the same. Her fingers knew things that her mind did not. Maya played until she heard the warning bell ring. That meant she had 5 minutes to get to her next class. She stopped playing and looked at the clock, surprised. She had played through almost the entire lunch period without eating. She grabbed her backpack and ran from the room, taking the stairs 2 at a time, She barely made it to her art history class before the final bell rang. Her teacher, Mr. Patterson, gave her a strange look as she slipped into her seat slightly out of breath. Maya never ran. Maya was never almost late. That afternoon, sitting in class, Maya made a decision. She would come back to the practice room every day. Every single day. She would teach herself to play. She did not know how exactly. She had no sheet music, no teacher, no lessons. But she had the piano, and she had time, and she had something inside her that wanted to come out through music. And so she did. Every day at lunch, Maya went down to the basement to practice room 7 to her secret piano. At first, she continued working on Clair de Lune, trying to extend the melody beyond what her grandmother had taught her. She got some of it right and some of it wrong, but she did not care. It was her version now, her interpretation. After a week, she started experimenting with other melodies. Simple things at first. She would think of a feeling like happiness or sadness or loneliness, and try to find notes on the piano that matched that feeling. Happy feelings needed higher notes that bounced and jumped. Sad feelings needed lower notes that moved slowly and heavily. Maya discovered that the piano had a full range of emotions, just like her drawings did. With charcoal and paper, she could capture the exact look in someone's eyes that showed their hidden pain or secret joy. With the piano keys, she could create sounds that made people feel those same emotions, even without any face to look at. She started thinking about music all the time. During her other classes, she would tap her fingers on her desk, working out rhythms and melodies in her head. While she walked through the hallways, she hummed quietly to herself, testing out new musical ideas. At night, lying in her small dorm room, she would close her eyes and imagine playing the piano, her fingers moving over invisible keys. Her roommate, a friendly girl named Sarah who was studying photography, noticed the change. "You seem happier lately," Sarah said one evening. "Did something good happen?" Maya looked up from her sketchbook, surprised. She and Sarah were friendly enough, but they did not talk much. Maya preferred it that way. Less talking meant less chance of saying something awkward or wrong. "I don't know," Maya said quietly. "Maybe," Sarah smiled. "Well, whatever it is, it's nice. You're humming a lot." "I didn't know you liked music." Maya felt her cheeks get warm. She did not know she had been humming out loud. "I guess I do," she said. After 3 weeks of daily practice, something unexpected happened. Maya was in the practice room, working on a new melody she had created. It was a slow, gentle piece that reminded her of rain falling on windows. She was so focused on the music that she did not hear the door to the practice room next door open and close. In practice room 6, Jake Morrison dropped his backpack on the floor with a heavy thud. He was frustrated and tired. Jake was a senior, a composition major who was supposed to graduate in 2 months. But he had a big problem. For his final project, he needed to write and perform an original musical composition. It was worth half his grade for his most important class. The problem was that everything Jake wrote sounded boring. He was good at music theory. He understood all the rules about how notes and chords should fit together. He could write technically perfect pieces that followed all the correct patterns. But they had no soul. They were like buildings with perfect architecture but no warmth inside, no life. His professor had told him the same thing at their last meeting. "Jake, your technical skills are excellent, but your music doesn't make me feel anything. It's correct, but it's empty. You need to find the emotion in your work." Jake had nodded and said he would try harder, but he did not know how. He could not just make himself feel more emotional. He had tried. He had tried writing music when he was angry, when he was sad, when he was happy. But somehow, by the time the notes were written on paper, all the feeling had leaked out. Everything he wrote sounded the same, perfect but lifeless. Jake sat down at the piano in practice room 6. He opened his composition notebook and looked at his latest attempt. It was a piece in C major, following a traditional sonata form. Every note was exactly where it should be according to the rules he had learned. He started to play it, his fingers moving precisely over the keys. He made it through the first page before he stopped. He wanted to throw his notebook across the room. This was terrible. This was boring. No one would want to listen to this at his senior recital. He put his head in his hands, feeling hopeless. That was when he heard it. A piano playing in the room next door. At first, Jake thought it was another music student practicing. But as he listened more carefully, He realized this was different. The playing was not technically perfect. He could hear small mistakes, hesitations, notes that were not quite right. But there was something in the music that made him sit up and pay attention. It had feeling. Real, honest feeling. Jake stood up and walked to the wall that separated his practice room from the one next door. He pressed his ear against it, listening more carefully. The melody was simple but beautiful. It reminded him of rain or tears or something sad but also peaceful. The player would sometimes hit a wrong note, pause, then try again. But that did not matter. What mattered was the emotion that poured through every note. This was what Jake's professor had been talking about. This was what his own music was missing. Jake listened for 10 more minutes until the playing stopped. He heard the scrape of a piano bench being pushed back. He heard the sound of a door opening and closing in the hallway. Quickly, he moved to his own door and opened it just a crack. Peeking out into the hallway, he saw a tall girl with long black hair walking away. She had a backpack covered in paint stains. He recognized her vaguely from around campus, but he did not know her name. She was not a music student. He was sure of that. He knew most of the music students, at least by sight. So who was she? And how had she learned to play with so much emotion? Jake made a decision. Tomorrow he would come to the practice rooms during lunch again. He would listen, and if he got the chance, he would talk to this mysterious girl with the paint-stained backpack who played the piano like she was telling a secret. The next day, Jake arrived at practice room 6 10 minutes before lunch period started. He brought his composition notebook, trying to look like he was there to work on his project. But really, he was waiting to hear the music from the room next door. At exactly noon, he heard the door to practice room 7 open and close. There was silence for a moment, then the sound of a piano bench being moved. Then the music started. Today, the melody was different. It was brighter, faster, like someone running or birds flying, but it still had that same quality of real emotion. It still had what Jake's music lacked. He listened for 20 minutes. He did not even pretend to work on his own composition. He just sat there with his ear pressed against the wall, absorbing every note, trying to understand how this unknown musician created such powerful music without following any of the technical rules Jake had spent 4 years learning. When the music stopped, Jake made his move. He grabbed his notebook and rushed out of his practice room. He looked down the hallway and saw the girl just leaving practice room 7. She was closing the door carefully, quietly, like she did not want anyone to know she had been there. "Hey," Jake called out. His voice echoed in the empty basement hallway. The girl jumped, startled. She turned around and Jake saw her face clearly for the first time. She had large, dark eyes that looked scared. Her cheeks turned red immediately. "Wait, please," Jake said, walking toward her. He tried to make his voice sound friendly and not threatening. The girl looked like she might run away at any second. "I just want to talk to you for a second." The girl clutched her backpack straps tightly. She did not say anything, just looked at him with those wide, frightened eyes. "I'm Jake," he said, stopping a few feet away from her. "I'm a composition major. I was practicing in the room next to yours and I heard you playing." The girl's eyes got even wider. The red in her cheeks spread down her neck. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet that Jake had to strain to hear it. "I didn't mean to bother anyone. I didn't know anyone else was down here. I can find somewhere else to practice." No, Jake said quickly. "You didn't bother me at all. The opposite, actually. Your playing is really beautiful." The girl looked down at her shoes. She did not seem to know what to say to that. "What's your name?" Jake asked gently. "Maya," the girl whispered. "Maya," Jake repeated. "Are you a music student?" "I don't think I've seen you in any of my classes." Maya shook her head. "Art student," she said quietly. "But you play piano?" Maya shook her head again. "Not really. I'm just teaching myself. My grandmother taught me a little bit when I was small, but that's all." Jake felt his excitement growing. This girl had no formal training. She was teaching herself, and she could create music that made him feel something real. This was incredible. "Maya, I know this might sound strange," Jake said, "but I need your help." Maya finally looked up at him, confusion in her eyes. "I'm working on a composition for my senior recital," Jake explained. "It's really important, but everything I write is technically correct but emotionally empty. When I heard you playing, I realized you have what I'm missing. You have the feeling, the emotion. I have the technical knowledge. What if we work together?" Maya stared at him. She looked terrified by the idea. We could meet here in the practice rooms, Jake continued quickly, worried she would say no, a few times a week. You could play and I could help you with technique and music theory. I could write down your melodies and turn them into complete compositions. We'd be collaborating, helping each other. Maya was silent for a long moment. Jake could see her thinking, struggling with the idea. Finally she spoke, her voice barely audible. I don't know. I've never worked with anyone before. Just think about it, Jake said. I'll be here tomorrow at lunch. If you want to try, we can start then. If not, that's okay too. I promise I won't bother you again. Maya nodded slightly, then turned and walked quickly down the hallway toward the stairs. Jake watched her go, hoping desperately that she would come back tomorrow. In her mind, Maya was panicking. Someone had heard her playing. Her secret place was not secret anymore. She wanted to run away, to never go back to that practice room again. But another part of her, a small, brave part, was curious. What would it be like to work with someone else? What would it be like to not be alone all the time? That night, Maya barely slept. She kept thinking about Jake's offer. By morning, she still had not decided what to do. Maya spent the entire morning of the next day feeling sick to her stomach. In every class, she watched the clock on the wall, watching the minutes tick slowly toward lunchtime. Part of her wanted lunch period to come quickly so she could get it over with. Another part of her wanted the morning to last forever so she would not have to make a decision. Should she go down to the basement? Should she meet Jake? Or should she go somewhere else for lunch? Somewhere safe where nobody would ask her to do scary things like collaborate and work together. By the time her morning art class ended, Maya still had not decided. She packed her supplies slowly, watching her classmates leave the room in groups. Ms. Rodriguez was at her desk writing comments on student papers. Maya, her teacher called out. Can you come here for a moment? Maya's heart sank. She walked slowly to Ms. Rodriguez's desk, wondering if she had done something wrong. Ms. Rodriguez smiled warmly. I wanted to tell you that your last portrait was exceptional. The way you captured the light on the subject's face was really masterful. Thank you, Maya whispered. You know, Maya, Ms. Rodriguez said gently, I've been teaching for 15 years. And I can always tell which students have real artistic passion. You have it. Your work shows such depth of feeling. I just hope that one day you'll feel confident enough to share that gift with more people. Maya nodded, not knowing what to say. Ms. Rodriguez patted her hand kindly and went back to her papers. Maya left the classroom, her teacher's words echoing in her head. Share that gift with more people. Maybe that was what Jake was offering her, a chance to share. A chance to let someone else see the things she felt inside. Before she could change her mind, Maya turned toward the back staircase. Her feet carried her down to the basement, down the long hallway, all the way to practice room 7. She stood outside the door for a full minute, her hand on the doorknob trying to gather her courage. Finally, she opened the door and stepped inside. The room was empty. Jake was not there yet. Maya felt both relief and disappointment. Maybe he had changed his mind. Maybe he had decided she was not good enough to work with after all. She sat down on the piano bench and stared at the keys. Her hands were shaking slightly. She felt foolish for being so nervous. Jake seemed nice enough. He had been polite and respectful when they talked. But working with another person, letting someone watch her play, letting someone into her private space, it all felt overwhelming. Just as Maya was starting to think Jake was not coming, she heard footsteps in the hallway. The door to practice room 6 next door opened and closed. There was silence for a moment, then a knock on Maya's door. Maya, Jake's voice called from outside. Are you in there? Maya's mouth felt dry. Yes, she managed to say, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. The door opened and Jake stepped in. He was carrying a backpack and what looked like a folder full of papers. He smiled when he saw her sitting at the piano. You came, he said, and he sounded genuinely happy about it. I wasn't sure if you would. I almost didn't, Maya admitted quietly. Jake nodded. I understand. This is probably weird for you. It's kind of weird for me too, to be honest. I've never collaborated with anyone before. This surprised Maya. Really, Jake said. He pulled over the old wooden chair from the corner and sat down, keeping a respectful distance from the piano. I've always been the kind of person who works alone. I think maybe that's part of my problem. I've been so focused on following rules and doing everything technically correct that I forgot music is supposed to be about connection. About communication, Maya understood this. She had always worked alone too. In art class, while other students collaborated on projects, Maya stayed in her corner with her sketchbook. It was safer that way. Less complicated. But also she was realizing, maybe a little lonely. So how does this work? Maya asked, her voice still quiet but a little steadier. Jake opened his folder and pulled out some blank sheet music paper. Well, I thought maybe you could play something for me. Whatever you want, and I'll listen. Then maybe we can talk about it, and I can show you some music theory basics that might help you develop your melodies further. Maya turned back to the piano. Having someone watch her play felt strange and uncomfortable. For weeks, this room had been her private sanctuary. Now there was someone else here, someone who would hear every mistake, every wrong note. I'm not very good, Maya said, stalling. You're good enough, Jake replied. You play with feeling. That's more important than technical perfection. Trust me, I can play perfectly and make it sound boring. You make mistakes and make it sound beautiful. I'll take your way over mine any day. Maya took a deep breath. She placed her hands on the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to forget that Jake was there watching her. She thought about her grandmother, about the first time she had played in this room, about the feeling of discovering something precious and secret. Then she began to play. She started with the section of Clair de Lune that her grandmother had taught her. Her fingers moved through the familiar notes and she felt herself relax a little. Then she moved into the parts she had taught herself, the extensions and variations she had created. The melody flowed and changed, sometimes sad, sometimes hopeful, like memories of someone you loved who was gone. Maya played for about 5 minutes. When she finished, the room was quiet. She kept her eyes on the keys, afraid to look at Jake, afraid of what his face might show. That was incredible, Jake said, and his voice was full of genuine awe. Maya looked up at him, surprised. Jake was leaning forward in his chair, his eyes bright with excitement. Do you know what you just did? He asked. Maya shook her head. You took a classical piece and made it your own. You found the emotion in it and then you expanded on that emotion. The way you moved from the original melody into your own variations was natural and organic. It told a story. I was thinking about my grandmother, Maya said softly. She's the one who taught me the first part. She died 2 years ago. When I play it, I remember her. Jake nodded slowly. That's what I mean. You're not just playing notes. You're expressing something real, something personal. That's what my compositions are missing. He moved his chair a little closer and showed Maya the sheet music paper. Can you play that again? Slower this time? I want to write it down. For the next 20 minutes, Maya played while Jake wrote. He would ask her to repeat sections, to play just the right hand or just the left hand, to help him understand the structure of what she was creating. Maya found that having a specific task made her less nervous. She was not performing for Jake. She was helping him with a project. When they had captured the main melody on paper, Jake started teaching Maya about music theory. He explained about scales and chords, about key signatures and time signatures. He used simple language and related everything back to the piece Maya had just played. See this part here? He said, pointing to the written music. You naturally moved from C major to A minor. That's called a relative minor. They share the same notes, but the feeling is different. Sadder. You probably didn't know the technical name for it, but your ear knew it was right. Maya leaned over to look at the paper. For the first time in her life, she was seeing her music written down in proper notation. It looked official and real. It made what she had created feel legitimate somehow. You have really good instincts, Jake continued. My guess is you've listened to a lot of music, even if you've never studied it formally. Maya nodded. My grandmother played for me a lot when I was little, and I like to listen to classical music while I draw. It helps me focus. That makes sense, Jake said. You've been absorbing musical language your whole life, even if you didn't realize it. Now you're speaking that language naturally. The warning bell rang, signaling that lunch period was almost over. Both Maya and Jake looked up in surprise. The time had passed so quickly. Can we do this again tomorrow? Jake asked as he gathered his papers. I feel like I learned more in the last 40 minutes than I have in the past month. Maya hesitated, then nodded. Okay, great, Jake said, smiling. Same time, same place, and Maya, thank you. Really, you're helping me more than you know. After Jake left, Maya sat at the piano for a few more minutes. Something had shifted inside her. She had shared her music with another person, and the world had not ended. In fact, it had felt good. Scary, but good. Over the next 2 weeks, Maya and Jake met every day at lunch in practice room 7. They fell into a comfortable routine. Maya would play and Jake would listen and take notes. Then they would talk about the music and Jake would teach Maya theory while Maya would help Jake understand how to put real emotion into his compositions. Jake learned that Maya's musical ideas often came from her art. She would describe a portrait she was working on, a particular expression on someone's face, and then try to capture that same feeling in music. Jake found this fascinating. He had never thought about connecting music to visual art before. Maya learned that music had rules and structure, but those rules were meant to be tools, not prisons. Jake showed her how understanding theory could actually give her more freedom to express herself, not less. He taught her about different chord progressions and how they could create different emotional effects. They started working together on Jake's senior recital piece. Jake had the idea to create a composition that would blend his technical knowledge with Maya's emotional intuition. They called it Sketches in Sound, connecting it to Maya's identity as an art student. The piece had multiple movements, each one based on a different melody Maya created. Jake would take her raw musical ideas and develop them, adding harmonies and structure, creating a bridge between her instinctive playing and formal composition. As they worked, something unexpected happened. Maya started to come out of her shell. Not completely and not all at once, but little by little she found it easier to talk to Jake. She started sharing more about her life, her thoughts, her feelings. Jake was a good listener, and he never made her feel stupid or strange for being shy. Jake, for his part, found that working with Maya was changing him too. She made him think about music in new ways. She reminded him why he had wanted to study music in the first place, before all the rules and requirements and pressure to be perfect had made him forget the joy of it. One day, about 3 weeks into their collaboration, Maya arrived at the practice room to find Jake already there. Looking excited, "I have something to show you," he said, pulling out his laptop. "I worked on our piece last night, adding some development to the second movement. I want to hear what you think." He played the recording he had made. It was Maya's melody, but expanded and enriched with harmonies and counter-melodies that Jake had added. It was beautiful. It made Maya feel like she was hearing her own thoughts reflected back to her, but clearer and more complete. "Jake, that's amazing," she said. "We're amazing," Jake corrected. "This is both of us. I couldn't have done this without your melodies. They're the heart of everything." Maya felt a warm glow in her chest. For so much of her life she had felt invisible, like nothing she did mattered much. But here was proof that she could create something valuable, something beautiful, and more than that, she could create it with another person. She could collaborate. She could connect. "I have an idea," Jake said, looking a little nervous. "For the recital. I know it's scary, but I think it would make the piece even better." "What is it?" Maya asked, though she had a feeling she knew what he was going to say. "What if you performed it with me?" Jake said. "Not the whole thing. Just one movement. We could play together like we practice. It would be a true collaboration." Maya's immediate reaction was panic. Perform in front of people? Her worst nightmare. She started shaking her head before she even spoke. "I can't," she said. "I'm not good enough. I'm not a real musician. People would laugh." "Maya, no one would laugh," Jake said firmly. "You're better than you think you are. And besides, you wouldn't be performing alone. I'd be right there with you. We'd do it together." "I don't know," Maya said, her voice shaking. "You don't have to decide now," Jake said gently. "The recital isn't for another month. Just think about it, please." Maya nodded, but inside she was already sure of her answer. There was no way she could get up on a stage in front of people. No way, that was too much. She had come a long way in the past few weeks, but she was not that brave. She would never be that brave, or would she? Maya spent the next week thinking about Jake's invitation to perform. Actually, it was more than thinking. It was worrying. The idea of standing on a stage in front of dozens or maybe hundreds of people made her feel physically sick. Every time she imagined it, her hands would start to sweat and her breathing would get fast and shallow. But there was another feeling mixed in with the fear. A tiny spark of something that might have been excitement. What would it be like to share her music with more people? What would it be like to be seen, really seen for something she had created? Maya tried to talk herself out of these thoughts. She reminded herself of all the times in the past when she had tried to be brave, and it had ended badly. In middle school, she had volunteered to read her essay aloud in English class. She had gotten so nervous that her voice had cracked and she had run out of the room crying. In high school, she had tried to join the art club, but everyone else seemed to know each other already and she had felt like an outsider. After 2 meetings, she had stopped going. No, Maya thought. Performing was not for people like her. People like her stayed in the background, safe and unseen. But Jake did not give up. He did not push hard or pressure her, but he brought it up gently every few days. I wrote out a part for you, he said one day at lunch, showing her sheet music with her name at the top, just in case you change your mind. Another day he told her about his recital. It's going to be in the main concert hall. The acoustics there are amazing. You'd love it. And another day, my parents are coming to watch. I told them about you, about our collaboration. They're excited to meet you. Each time Jake mentioned the recital, Maya felt her resolve weaken just a little bit. She could see how much this meant to him. And if she was being honest with herself, she could feel how much it was starting to mean to her too. Their daily practice sessions continued. Jake's composition was coming together beautifully. Maya could hear her own melodies woven throughout the piece, but enriched and expanded by Jake's knowledge of harmony and structure. It really was a collaboration, a blend of both their strengths. One afternoon, Ms. Rodriguez pulled Maya aside after art class. Maya, you seem different lately, she said. Happier. More confident. Has something changed? Maya felt her cheeks turn red, like they always did when someone paid attention to her. But she found herself wanting to tell Ms. Rodriguez about the music, about Jake, about everything. I've been learning to play piano, Maya said quietly, and I'm working with someone, a composition student. We're creating music together. Ms. Rodriguez's face lit up with joy. Maya, that's wonderful. I always thought there was something musical about your art. The rhythm in your lines, the harmony in your compositions. It makes sense that you would be drawn to music too. He wants me to perform with him, Maya blurted out, at his senior recital. But I don't think I can do it. I'm too scared. Ms. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she said something that surprised Maya. You know, being an artist means being vulnerable. Every time you show your art to someone, you're taking a risk. You're letting them see inside you, into the private places where your feelings and ideas live. That's scary, but it's also how we connect with other people. It's how we share our humanity. Maya had never thought about it that way before, but Ms. Rodriguez was right. Every drawing she made was personal, was part of her. And she did share those drawings, at least with her teachers and classmates. Maybe performing music would not be so different. What if I mess up? Maya asked. What if I play the wrong notes? Then you play the wrong notes, Ms. Rodriguez said with a smile. Nobody is perfect, Maya. The people who seem the most confident are usually just as scared as you are. They've just learned that doing scary things can lead to beautiful things. That night, Maya lay in her dorm room bed staring at the ceiling. Her roommate Sarah was already asleep, breathing softly in the bed across the room. Maya thought about everything Ms. Rodriguez had said. She thought about her grandmother, who had never been afraid to share her music. She thought about Jake, who had taken a risk by approaching her in the hallway that day, by asking for her help. And she thought about the girl she had been when she first arrived at Brighton Arts Academy. So shy she could barely speak above a whisper. That girl was still there inside her. But there was another Maya emerging, one who created beautiful music, one who collaborated with others, one who might be brave enough to perform. The next day at lunch, Maya found Jake already waiting in practice room 7. He was sitting at the piano playing through their piece. He looked up when she came in. Hey, he said, smiling. I was just working on the transitions. I think I figured out how to make the second movement flow better into the third. Maya put down her backpack. Her heart was beating fast. Jake, I've been thinking about the recital. Jake stopped playing. He turned on the piano bench to face her, his expression careful and hopeful. I'm scared, Maya said. Her voice was shaking, but she kept talking. I'm really scared. I've never done anything like this before. But I want to try. If you still want me to, I'll perform with you. Jake's face broke into a huge smile. He stood up, and for a moment Maya thought he might hug her, but he seemed to catch himself. Instead, he just said, Really? You mean it? Maya nodded. I mean it. But you have to promise you'll be patient with me. I might change my mind 100 times between now and then. I promise, Jake said. And thank you, Maya. This means everything to me. Our piece won't be complete without you. From that day on, their practice sessions changed. They were no longer just working on the composition. They were rehearsing for an actual performance. Jake brought in a metronome to help Maya keep steady time. He taught her about stage presence and how to recover gracefully if she made a mistake. The key is to never stop, Jake explained. If you hit a wrong note, don't freeze up or start over. Just keep going. Most people in the audience won't even notice. They're listening to the overall music, not analyzing every single note. They practiced their piece over and over. At first, Maya made a lot of mistakes. She would get nervous knowing that Jake was listening, knowing that this would soon be a real performance and her fingers would fumble. But Jake was patient and encouraging, just like he had promised. Better, he would say after each run-through. That was much better. Your timing was perfect in the second section. Slowly, very slowly, Maya started to feel more comfortable. She began to trust that her fingers knew what to do. She began to understand that mistakes were not the end of the world. And most importantly, she began to feel a sense of ownership over the performance. This was not just Jake's recital that she was helping with. This was her music too. She had created these melodies. She had earned the right to share them. 3 weeks before the recital, Jake made an announcement. I spoke to my professor, Dr. Chen. He wants to hear us rehearse. Is that okay? Maya's stomach dropped. Another person watching her play? But she had said yes to performing in front of a whole audience. One professor should not be harder than that. Okay, she said, trying to sound brave. Dr. Chen came to their practice room the next day. He was an older man with gray hair and kind eyes. He shook Maya's hand and thanked her for working with Jake. I've noticed a real change in Jake's compositions this semester, Dr. Chen said. There's an emotional depth that wasn't there before. I understand I have you to thank for that. Maya did not know what to say, so she just nodded. Well, let's hear what you two have created, Dr. Chen said, settling into the old wooden chair. Maya sat at the piano with Jake beside her. They had arranged the piece so that some parts Jake played alone, some parts Maya played alone, and some parts they played together, their hands moving across the same keyboard. Maya took a deep breath and looked at Jake. He nodded encouragingly. They began to play. Maya was nervous at first, hyper-aware of Dr. Chen watching them. But as the music progressed, she began to lose herself in it the way she did when she was alone. The melody flowed from her fingers, carrying all the emotion she had poured into it. Sadness and hope, memory and longing, loss and love. When they finished, Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Maya's heart sank. He hated it. It was terrible. She had ruined Jake's recital. Then Dr. Chen began to clap. Bravo, he said, and there were tears in his eyes. That was truly beautiful. Jake, this is the finest work you've done in your 4 years here. And Maya, you have a rare gift. Have you considered studying music formally? Maya shook her head, surprised by the question. I'm an art student. Well, whoever your art teachers are, they're lucky to have you, Dr. Chen said. But I hope you'll continue with music as well. You have something special. After Dr. Chen left, Maya and Jake looked at each other. Jake was grinning. He liked it, Jake said. He really liked it. He cried, Maya said, still amazed. You made him cry with your music, Jake corrected. Maya, do you understand how incredible that is? Maya smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. Maybe she really could do this. Maybe she really could perform. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of practice and preparation. Jake arranged for Maya to see the concert hall where the recital would take place. It was bigger than she had imagined, with rows and rows of seats and a large stage with a beautiful grand piano. There will probably be about 200 people here, Jake said as they stood on the empty stage. 200 people. Maya felt dizzy, but Jake took her hand and squeezed it. Remember, you're not performing for them, he said. You're sharing something with them. There's a difference. Maya tried the piano on the stage. It was much nicer than the old upright in the practice room. The keys were smooth and responsive. The sound filled the entire hall, rich and full. It sounds beautiful, Maya said. You sound beautiful, Jake corrected. In the final week before the recital, Maya told Ms. Rodriguez about the performance. Her teacher was delighted and promised to be there. Maya also, in a rare moment of bravery, told Sarah, her roommate, "That's so cool," Sarah said. "I didn't even know you played piano. Can I come watch?" Maya nodded, touched that Sarah wanted to come. Maybe after the recital, she and Sarah could become better friends. Maybe Maya could start building more connections with people. The night before the recital, Maya could not sleep. She lay in bed, running through the piece in her mind, her fingers moving slightly on the blanket as if playing invisible keys. She thought about all the hours she had spent in practice room 7, alone with the old piano. She thought about the day Jake had knocked on her door and changed everything. She thought about her grandmother, who she wished could be there to see her perform. But maybe in some way her grandmother would be there. The music Maya would play tomorrow started with the melody her grandmother had taught her. It was a way of keeping her grandmother alive, of sharing her memory with the world. Maya finally fell asleep around 3 in the morning. When she woke up, sunlight was streaming through the dorm room window. Sarah was already up, sitting at her desk. "Big day," Sarah said with a smile. "How are you feeling?" Maya sat up and took stock of her emotions. She was terrified. But underneath the terror was something else. Excitement, readiness, a sense that she was about to do something important, something that mattered. "I'm scared," Maya admitted. "But I'm ready." The recital was scheduled for 7 o'clock that evening. Maya spent the day trying to stay calm. She went to her morning classes but could not focus. She met Jake for lunch and they ran through the piece one more time in the practice room. "You're going to be great," Jake said. "I believe in you." "I believe in us," Maya replied, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. At 6:30, Maya stood backstage in the concert hall, wearing a simple black dress that Ms. Rodriguez had helped her pick out. Through the curtain, she could hear the audience arriving, the murmur of voices, the rustling of programs. Jake stood beside her in a black suit. He looked nervous too, which somehow made Maya feel better. "Ready?" he asked. Maya took a deep breath. She thought about the shy girl who had hidden in corners, who had eaten lunch alone in basement practice rooms. That girl was still part of her, and that was okay. But she was also this new Maya, the one who created beautiful music, who collaborated with others, who was brave enough to share her gifts. "Ready," Maya said. The lights dimmed. The audience grew quiet. It was time. The stage manager, a student named Marcus, gave Jake a thumbs up. It was time to go on. Jake looked at Maya one more time and whispered, "Remember, we do this together." Maya nodded. Her hands were shaking, but she made herself walk forward. She followed Jake through the curtain and onto the stage. The lights were bright, much brighter than she had expected. Beyond the lights, she could barely see the audience, just dark shapes filling the rows of seats. It was better that way, she thought. She could pretend there were fewer people out there. Jake walked to the center of the stage. He stood at the microphone and cleared his throat. Maya stood slightly behind him, her hands clasped in front of her. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her and wanted to run away. But she stayed. "Good evening," Jake said. His voice carried through the hall clearly. "Thank you all for coming to my senior recital. Before we begin, I want to tell you about the piece you're about to hear. It's called Sketches in Sound, and it represents a collaboration between myself and Maya Chen, an art student here at Brighton Arts Academy." Jake gestured toward Maya, and she felt every person in the audience turn their attention to her. Her face felt hot, but she managed a small smile. "This piece would not exist without Maya," Jake continued. "She taught me something crucial about music, something I had forgotten in my years of formal training. She taught me that technique without emotion is meaningless, that the heart of music is not in following rules perfectly, but in expressing something true and real." Jake paused, and Maya could hear the emotion in his voice. "Maya created the melodies you're about to hear. I simply gave them structure and shape. What we've made together is something neither of us could have created alone, and in just a moment, Maya will be performing the third movement with me. For her, this is her first time ever performing in public. Please welcome her with your support and kindness." The audience applauded. It was warm and encouraging. Maya felt some of her terror ease just a little bit. These people were not here to judge her or laugh at her. They were here to listen. Jake sat down at the piano. He placed his hands on the keys and looked out at the audience one more time. Then he began to play. The first movement was Jake alone. It was the introduction, setting the mood and introducing the main themes. Maya stood at the side of the stage listening. Even though she had heard Jake play this many times, it sounded different here in the concert hall. The piano was richer, fuller. The acoustics of the room made every note shine. Jake played beautifully. His technique was flawless, his timing perfect. But more than that, there was feeling in his playing now. Real emotion. Maya could hear the change that their collaboration had brought to his music. It was not empty anymore. It had a soul. The first movement ended and the audience applauded. Jake moved smoothly into the second movement. This one was more complex, with faster passages and interesting harmonies. Jake's hands flew across the keys with confidence and grace. Maya felt proud watching him. She had helped make this possible. Then the second movement ended and Jake looked toward Maya. It was time for her part. Time for the third movement. Time for her to walk onto that stage and play in front of all these people. Maya's legs felt weak as she crossed the stage. The walk to the piano seemed to take forever, even though it was only a few steps. She sat down on the bench next to Jake. Up close, the audience was more visible. She could see faces now, people watching her with interest and anticipation. For a moment, Maya's mind went completely blank. She could not remember how the piece started. She could not remember what her hands were supposed to do. She looked at Jake with panic in her eyes. Jake leaned close to her and whispered so quietly that only she could hear. Just breathe. Close your eyes if you need to. Remember practice room 7. Remember why you play. Maya closed her eyes. She took a deep breath. She thought about the first day she had played that old upright piano in the basement. She thought about her grandmother, about the melody she had been taught as a child. She thought about all the hours she had spent creating music in that small, safe room. And then she remembered something Ms. Rodriguez had said. Every time you share your art, you're taking a risk. You're letting people see inside you. That's scary, but that's also how we connect. Maya opened her eyes. She looked down at the piano keys and suddenly she knew what to do. Her hands found their positions. Jake counted them in silently, nodding his head. 1, 2, 3, 4. They began to play together. The third movement started with the melody Maya's grandmother had taught her, the opening of Clair de Lune. Maya played it simply and clearly, and she thought she could almost feel her grandmother's presence beside her. Jake accompanied her with soft, gentle chords that supported the melody without overwhelming it. Then the piece moved into Maya's own compositions, the melodies she had created during those solitary lunch hours in the practice room. Her fingers knew these notes by heart. They knew the rises and falls, the moments of sadness and the moments of hope. As she played, Maya forgot about the audience. She forgot about her fear. She was just playing music, expressing feelings, telling a story without words. Jake and Maya played together, sometimes in harmony, sometimes taking turns with the melody. Their hands moved across the same keyboard, weaving in and out, creating a conversation in music. It was exactly like their practice sessions, except bigger, fuller, more alive. Maya poured everything into the music, all her shyness and loneliness, all her love for her grandmother, all her gratitude for Jake's friendship, all her wonder at discovering this new part of herself. The music became a bridge between her inner world and the outer world, a way to share all the things she could never say with words. There was a moment in the middle of the movement when Maya had a solo section. Jake's hands lifted from the keys and Maya played alone. It was the most vulnerable moment. Just her and the piano and the listening audience. Her hands trembled slightly, and she hit one note that was not quite right. For a split second, she wanted to stop, to apologize, to run. But then she remembered Jake's advice. If you make a mistake, don't stop. Just keep going. So Maya kept playing. She moved past the wrong note and continued with the melody. And something amazing happened. The mistake did not matter. The music was bigger than one wrong note. The emotion was still there, still real, still powerful. The solo section ended and Jake came back in. They played the final section together, building to a gentle climax and then settling into a quiet, peaceful ending. The last note hung in the air, fading slowly into silence. For a moment, there was no sound at all in the concert hall. Maya sat frozen at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys. Had it been terrible? Had people hated it? Then the applause began. It started as a ripple and grew into a wave. People were not just clapping politely. They were clapping enthusiastically with real appreciation. Some people stood up from their seats. More followed. Soon, most of the audience was standing, giving them a standing ovation. Maya looked at Jake in disbelief. Jake was smiling so wide his face looked like it might split in half. He stood up and pulled Maya to her feet. He held her hand and they bowed together. The applause continued, washing over them like warm water. Maya looked out at the audience, and for the first time she really saw them. In the front row, she saw Ms. Rodriguez clapping and wiping tears from her eyes. A few rows back, she saw Sarah, her roommate, cheering loudly. She saw Dr. Chen nodding with approval. She saw Jake's parents, who she recognized from pictures Jake had shown her, looking proud and happy. All these people had listened to her music. Her music, the melodies that had come from inside her, that she had been so afraid to share, and they had liked it. More than liked it. They had been moved by it. Jake led her off stage as the applause continued. As soon as they were backstage, hidden by the curtain, Maya felt tears streaming down her face. But they were not tears of fear or sadness. They were tears of release, of joy, of overwhelming relief and happiness. "You did it," Jake said, and he was crying too. "Maya, you were amazing. You were perfect." "I hit a wrong note," Maya said through her tears. "I know," Jake said. "And you kept playing. That's what made it perfect." They had to go back on stage for the final movements of Jake's recital. Maya returned to the side of the stage and watched Jake perform 2 more pieces. But the third movement, their movement, the collaboration, that was the heart of the performance. That was what people would remember. When the recital finally ended, when Jake took his final bow, the audience applauded for a long time. Then people began coming forward to congratulate them. Jake's parents hugged them both. Dr. Chen shook Maya's hand and gave her his card. "If you ever want to pursue music seriously, come see me," he said. "You have natural talent that I rarely see." Ms. Rodriguez embraced Maya tightly. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You were brave tonight." Other people Maya did not know came up to speak to her. They asked her questions about her music, about how she had learned to play, about whether she would be performing again. Maya answered as best she could, her voice still quiet but steadier than before. Sarah stayed by her side, helping field questions and providing moral support. One woman introduced herself as a music producer from a small record label in the city. "I'd love to talk to you about recording some of your compositions," she said, giving Maya her business card. "What you played tonight was special, original. It deserves to be heard by more people." Maya took the card with shaking hands. A record producer wanted to work with her? It seemed impossible, like a dream. Another man said he was from the university's music department. "We have a scholarship program for students with exceptional talent," he said. "Even though you're currently an art student, you could potentially pursue a dual degree if you're interested. I'll send you information." Jake stood beside Maya through all of this, beaming with pride. When there was finally a break in the crowd, he turned to her and said, "Do you realize what just happened? Your life just changed." Maya thought about this. He was right. Everything was different now. She had done something she never thought she could do. She had stood on a stage and shared her music with hundreds of people. And the world had not ended. Instead, it had opened up. But more than the opportunities and the compliments and the attention, what mattered most to Maya was the feeling inside her chest. It was a feeling of pride, yes, but also of connection. She had reached out to others through her music, and they had reached back. She had been vulnerable, and instead of being hurt, she had been embraced. Later that night, after the concert hall had emptied and the lights had been turned off, Maya and Jake sat on the edge of the stage, their legs dangling over the front. They were both exhausted but too excited to go home yet. "Thank you," Maya said, "for asking me to do this, for believing I could." "Thank you for saying yes," Jake replied, "for taking the risk, for sharing your gift." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out at the empty seats. Maya thought about the shy girl who had sat alone in practice room 7 just a few months ago. That girl felt like a different person now, but she was not really gone. She was still part of Maya, the quiet part that observed and felt deeply, the part that created beauty in solitude. The difference was that now there was another Maya too, one who could collaborate, one who could perform, one who could step into the spotlight when it mattered. "What are you going to do?" Jake asked. "About the producer? About the scholarship?" Maya considered this. A few months ago, the answer would have been automatic. She would have said no to everything, would have retreated back to her safe corner. But now? "I don't know yet," Maya said honestly. "Maybe I'll talk to the producer. Maybe I'll look into the scholarship. Maybe I'll just keep playing piano in practice rooms and see where it leads. I don't have to decide everything tonight." Jake nodded. "That's wise. You have time. But I do know one thing," Maya continued. "I want to keep making music. Maybe not always performing. That's still scary. But creating, collaborating, sharing what I make, I want to keep doing that. Then you will, Jake said. Because you're not that scared girl anymore. Or you are that girl, but you're also so much more. Maya smiled. He was right. She was still shy. She probably always would be, to some degree. But shyness did not have to mean invisibility. It did not have to mean silence. She could be quiet and still have a voice. She could be reserved and still connect with others. The janitor came by and told them the building was closing. Jake and Maya walked out together into the cool night air. The campus was peaceful and quiet. Above them, stars sparkled in the clear sky. Look, Maya said, pointing up. The moon. It was nearly full, bright and silver, just like in the song her grandmother had taught her. Clair de Lune, light of the moon. It's beautiful, Jake said. Maya nodded. Everything felt beautiful tonight. The world felt full of possibility. She had taken a simple tune, a melody from her childhood, and let it grow into something bigger. She had revealed a hidden talent, not just to others, but to herself. And in doing so, she had changed everything. Not the external world, perhaps, but her own world, her own understanding of who she could be and what she could do. She had learned that being brave did not mean not feeling afraid. It meant feeling afraid and doing the thing anyway. As Maya walked back to her dorm that night, she thought about tomorrow. She would go to her art classes and continue drawing. She would go to practice room 7 at lunch and play the piano. Maybe alone, maybe with Jake, it did not matter. What mattered was that she would keep creating, keep growing, keep pushing against the boundaries of her comfort zone. The shy art student who had played a simple tune had discovered that she was capable of so much more than she had ever imagined. And this, Maya knew, was just the beginning.